Hey everybody, welcome back. So in my last video, I showed you all these test blocks and I talked about and displayed the settings that I have worked on in Cura to get really smooth and uniform top layers. And the responses I got were really interesting. Most of them revolved around how Cura sucks, and most of you have switched from it to either IdeaMaker or Prusa Slicer. And one remark was really interesting. It pretty much said, why should I adjust a dozen obscure settings in Cura just to get a good top layer when IdeaMaker or Prusa Slicer will do it out of the box? And that really got me thinking, what really is the out-of-box experience? You know, the new software installation, even if you're experienced at 3D printing, you might not be experienced in a particular piece of software or another, because let's face it, these are three quite different pieces of software. So I put them all on my computer. I created fresh configurations, and I'll show you how I did it in them. And we'll look at the different settings in it, and we'll have some out-of-box prints to compare between the three for top layers. Now, before I go any further, I think it's only fair to say that I have a lot of experience with Cura, very little with IdeaMaker because their previous gray-on-gray interface just wrecked my eyes, and almost none with Prusa Slicer because it's based on a piece of software that I did not like at all. I have not looked at Slicer or Prusa Slicer ever. I mean, back when I originally started 3D printing, I played with Slicer, but I hated it so much I have never looked at it again. So let's take a look. I've got them all on my computer. I've got fresh setups going. Let's print something. This is all going to be on my Alpha YZ20, which is basically a CR10 clone. The only changes that have been made to it is it has a mirror bed, it has a dual gear extruder, and it has the hot end off of one of my it's not CR10, but hot end off one of my Ender 3s on it. So let's go over to my computer and let's look at the software. Okay, here we are at the computer. So let's start with Cura, since that is the slicer that I'm most familiar with. In the upper left-hand corner, you see I have the printer set to an Alpha YZ20 OOB. OOB for out of the box. I did not want to use my current preset printer because I've probably been tweaking and tuning it. So I just created a new one based on the preset built into Cura for the Alpha YZ20 and renamed it OOB, so we are fresh with no changes. The profile over here I'm using is the built-in preset for extra fast. You see it has quite a few of them. All the ones I made for myself, I put my name in front of them. So this is just the built-in extra fast profile. Layer height is 0.3, line width is 0.4. I have changed the wall thickness and the top bottom thickness because I want 2 walls and 3 top bottom layers. And that's the only changes I made there. Top bottom pattern is lines. Infill is 20%, grid pattern. I changed the print temp and the bed temp to 210 and 50 respectively. Print speed I changed to 60 because I'm going to try and maintain these speeds and temperatures throughout all 3 programs. Retraction is enabled. Now here's one thing. I have not changed the retraction setting in any of these. I'm going with the defaults. So keep that in mind. Retraction distance is set to 5. Speed both retraction. You can split out the retraction speed and the reprime speed, but they're all set to 45 by default. Combing mode by default is on, and it is in everything, and that has been a problem for me in the past. Print cooling is on starting at layer 2, and no support, and you'll see I changed that because support was on by default. This model requires no support, so it doesn't matter. Build plate adhesion was originally brim, and I changed it to a skirt, and that's all I've done in Cura. Click slice, and Cura says it's going to take 55 minutes and 18 grams of filament. Okay, so now let's take a look at IdeaMaker. IdeaMaker is a slicer program that I am less familiar with, but I have used it on and off for quite some time. Mainly I haven't used it much because of that gray on gray user interface they used to have. It made everything look blurry to me, and the longer I looked at it, the blurrier it got, and it was really tough for me to use. So same model, and there is no AlphaWise U20 preset in IdeaMaker. You have to add it manually. It's got a kind of sort of a wizard to walk through, but it's really, you're just putting all the numbers in yourself. Since the AlphaWise U20 is pretty much a Creality CR10 clone, it's really easy to do. So I added one in, and then I'm just using a built-in preset for generic PLA. So let's click start. Let's click start slicing, and we will look at this, what it has for us in the way of settings. So we're just going to edit it, and we'll look at the settings. It came up with a layer height of 0.32, 2 shells. It was originally 3, I think. Anyway, I think I may have changed it to 2. IdeaMaker does not mark where you've changed, so I'm just having to go by memory. First layer height is 0.30. Flow rate is all 100. None of this other stuff, other dimensional compensation, small features, I haven't changed any of that. Extruder, extruder width, or in Cura it would be called line width, is 0.4. Retraction is turned on. Retraction amount is the same, but the speed is considerably lower in this program. And again, I may be making a mistake, but I'm going to leave the retraction set as it comes with the default for it in there. So there is that. Keep that in mind. As I said, infill 20%, grid, all of this I've left alone. I haven't changed any of it. Adaptive infill is off by default. Solid infill, top and bottom layers in this, if I remember right, were 5 when I put it in, so I changed it to 3 just so it would be the same. Number of top layers will change how this sounds stupid, but it will change how the top layers look, so I wanted them all to be set to 3. All else this I've left alone. Support, there is no support for this. Platform additions is what Cura calls bed adhesion. It's set to skirt only. Cooling comes on layer 2 at 100%. Temperature 50 and 210. Speed, default printing speed is 60. All the speeds under that I've left alone. For example, infill speed it has at 80. A first layer at 15. Outer shell at 25. Inner shell at 40. I'm not changing those, just the defaults. Advanced acceleration and jerk I have not changed. There's an override filament settings down here, and by default it's checked and it's set to 90% flow rate. I can't imagine that's going to produce anything good, but you know what? We're just going for an out-of-box experience, so let's see what we get. Ooze, other, and G-code I have not changed at all. So, and I haven't changed any of these start or ending G-codes at all. So that's it for the settings in IdeaMaker. Let's click slice, and it tells us 59 minutes and 44 seconds at 18.6 grams of filament. Very, very similar to what Cura said. So I have already printed these, so you know what? I'm just coming in and showing you after they've been printed. And these are the settings I use. So that's IdeaMaker. Okay, now let's take a look at Prusa Slicer. And Prusa Slicer is the toughest one for me to illustrate for you, because it's just very, I don't want to call it alien, but it's just, the settings are all over the place, and it's just hard for me to show them all in a way anyway and describe them. But anyway, I'm going to give it my best shot. This program also does not have a built-in preset for the AlphaWise U20. It does have a configuration wizard which walks you through getting set up. It's very basic and leaves a little be desired, but it does produce something that you can then adjust and work with. So let's take a look at it. I've already done it, called it the AlphaWise U20. Let's start over on the far right up here. Oh, and another thing let me mention, it has simple, advanced, and expert views. I have it set at expert. God knows I'm not one for Prusa Slicer, but I at least want to see what the settings are. I have no intention of changing anything and anything like that. So let's start at printer settings. And under general, you'll see that during the configuration wizard, it asks for the XY size. It does not ask for the Z size. It sets it at 200, which is wrong, but for this little thing I'm printing, I don't care. It's going to use Marlin. It asks you that. And variable height layer feature is checked. I don't know what that is, but it's a default and I'm leaving it. I have not changed the G code. I have not changed acceleration or jerk or feed rate. Under extruder, this is where you can find your nozzle diameter, your retraction settings. One thing to note, and don't ask me why, I don't know, but the default retraction for PLA in Prusa Slicer is 2. And that's a very, very short retraction. I can think of a number of reasons why they might have had it like that, but I'm not changing it because we're going out of the box. Retraction speed is 40, which is good, and you can go in and you can micromanage some of the other settings. I'm not changing them. Notes and dependencies have nothing in it we want. So we're going to go over to the tabs. We're going to click filament settings. Let's start at the top. Color and diameter and extrusion multiplier. Here is our extruder temperature and our bed temperature, which is 210 and 50 like the others. Cooling. By default, it's not going to turn the cooling fan on until layer 4. I'm not changing that because, again, I want an out-of-box experience, and I don't really think it's going to make a bit of difference to our top layers, which is what we're concerned about right now. Under advanced, we have our filament type, is it soluble, and a bunch of stuff that does not apply to what we're doing here. Filament overrides, I'm not exactly sure why these are here, but you can override the filament other than, I guess, what is in printer settings? I don't know. Seems odd to me, but who knows? There is no custom G code, notes and dependencies we don't care about. Over to printer settings, where most of the meat of our settings are. Layer height, it has a 0.3. First layer height, it has its 0.35. Perimeters, this is what Cura calls walls and what IdeaMaker calls shells. It's called perimeters here. It was set to 3. I changed it to 2. Top and bottom layers is 3. Down here, extra perimeters, detect thin walls. I have not changed any of this. These are the defaults. Infill is 20%. The fill pattern is stars. Top and bottom fill pattern is rectilinear, which I'm not sure I know what is, although I suspect it's a fancy name for lines. Skirt and brim is just a skirt with one loop. Support material, there is no support. Speed is interesting because there doesn't seem to be a default print speed unless you come down here where it says max. I don't know why max would be there under auto speed. I'm not really sure what that is, so I'm not going to change it. But you can see how it has the different print speeds set. Again, I'm going with default. So multiple extruders, this printer does not have multiples. Under advanced, now despite the fact that under extrusion width, despite the fact that all the little padlock icons show red and unlocked, I have not changed these. This is what the wizard put in. At first I was unsure and I deleted the profile and created it again, and these are all in here like this. So default extrusion width, line width in Cura, 0.45. First layer, 0.42. Perimeters, external perimeters, infill, and solid infill, all at 0.45, and top solid infill at 0.4. I find it really odd that it would micromanage those to such a tiny degree, but then again, you know, I'm falling back on they know their software better than I do because I don't know it at all. The rest of these things don't really seem, I don't think, to matter for what I'm trying to do here. Output options, notes and dependencies doesn't really have anything to do with what I'm trying to do. So let's go back here. Let's click Slice Now. And you'll see that it is going to, says it's going to take 1 hour 11 minutes, and it doesn't give us the filament in grams. It gives us to us in length, 6.97 meters of filament. So I've printed these. Let's go take a look at them. Okay, one thing, I don't know that if I remember if I mentioned it, but I am not using any alpha, any beta, or any master versions of any of this software. These are release versions only. I say that because one person in the comments in the last video mentioned something about Prusa Slicer having something called monotonic top layers, and that does not appear to be in the release version. At least I couldn't find it anywhere. If it is and I just missed it, tell me in one of those 72 pages of settings where it might be, and I'll go back and look for it. But anyway, you can see I labeled these Cura and I labeled these OOB because I'm assuming that I'm going to do this with beta and alpha master versions or tweaked versions of it. So I just want to know when I go back and look that these are the original out of what I call the out-of-box experience versions: Cura, IdeaMaker, and Prusa Slicer. And one thing to note, let's flip them over and we'll take a look at them. One thing to note, while I did try and keep this as scientific as I'm capable of here in my little work area, I had one slight problem with that, and that is I ran out of the white filament right near the end. When I do these kind of tests, I try and use my spools of filament that have a quarter of a roll or less, and I was pretty sure there was enough white left, and there wasn't. I would have done the whole thing over in red, but I'm not sure there's enough left on that spool of red. Besides, I think we can see what's going on here pretty clearly, even though we do have a little bit of red filament in it. So let's start with Cura. Now, if you'll remember, on my other Cura ones, I was getting that cracking. And let me make sure, let me try and hope I can get this to focus. And you'll notice that there doesn't seem to be any of those cracks in it now. But you'll also notice that Cura does not make a uniform top layer. There's all these extra lines where things meet and are stitched together. And it's solid, it's okay, but it is not an attractive top layer. It's not something that I would want to hand to a customer as a finished product, or my wife. And here is the multi-tier one in Cura. Now in this one you can see that I got some of that cracking back around that inner hole. And that was one of the main things that pushed me into trying to get Cura to print better top layers to begin with. But again, here you'll note that while the top layers, except for that little bit of cracking, are solid, Cura does not out of the box make particularly attractive top layers. The rest of it's fine. About what we would expect. All of them are about the same outside of their top layers. Some of them line the Z up and down, the Z step up and down. Some of them tried to spread it around, but it's all still about the same. This is IdeaMaker. And one thing you'll notice about IdeaMaker is while the top layer is rather rough, it is easily, I think anyway, the most uniform top layer of the three. And by rough, I mean the lines are kind of coarse. There's ridges between every line, but it's uniform. It is, in my opinion, an attractive top layer, even though it is coarser than the others. And here is the multi-tiered one. You notice I have none of those separations around the inner holes like I had in Cura. And I don't know. I really like the top layer that IdeaMaker produces. I think it is it's both uniform and attractive, and I like it. Let's go to Prusa Slicer. This is where I think we're getting into a little bit of trouble with their default retraction amount. You'll see I have stringing in the middle. And why it moved across that open space like that, I'm not really sure. It kind of gave me a Z-hop in the center of that hole. And to me, that's not really that good. Where it didn't do that, the top layer is, while not what I would call uniform, it is quite smooth. I think it's better than Cura, but I don't think it's as good as IdeaMaker. And here's the other one with a little bit of red on it. This was Prusa Slicer again. And if anything, I think the red illustrates the top layer even better than you see it in the white. So, very smooth, except where that stringing and that upper layer shift is. And I don't know why it did that. I don't know if just increasing the retraction amount from 2 to 5 would cure that, or if I need to go in and make some other setting change. But like I said, where it does not string, it is very smooth. Now it's also not uniform. You can see that stripe kind of, like a lawnmower strip right across the middle of the hole. It is not as uniform as IdeaMaker, even though the layer itself is smoother. So there they all are. That's your out-of-box experience for top layers for those 3 slicers. Now, in the next video, and I'm sure there's going to be a next one, we can try the tweaks. My version of Cura is already tweaked, I think, to be about as good as I can get it. But I got a long way to go in IdeaMaker and Prusa Slicer, especially Prusa Slicer. And maybe the alpha or beta version of Prusa Slicer will have that monotonic top layers, which will really make things a lot better. And maybe there's something I'm missing in IdeaMaker as well. If you have any tips for me in IdeaMaker or Prusa Slicer, and even in Cura, I mean, I don't know everything about it, that's for damn sure. If you have any tips for me, let me know. But other than that, that's all I have for you guys now. Please like and subscribe, hit notifications, and I'll catch you all the next time. Bye for now.